Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. The book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, came out in 2020, followed by Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, followed by Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children, which became a bestseller, which followed by Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through the Foster Care and Court Systems. That came out July 17th as a bestseller. And I have a return guest on. I'm happy to have Julie Andrews on. She was last on season 5, episode 134, which was July 12th of 2024, where we talked about knowing the signs of alienation before it is too late. And I totally welcome you back. We're going to talk about judicial corruption and how they're not held accountable. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you back because we were talking earlier and it seems like, they hold policemen, doctors, nurses accountable, doing drug tests, whatever, but not these judges.
Right. Or guarding at Litems and and uh and even the president can be impeached,
Mhm.
for things, but not not your judges. I don't understand that. It blows my mind that people, so many people have said to me, well, they must have had something on you.
Ugh.
And I say, they didn't. I raised my children, and when you get divorced, um, I didn't realize that you can't just get divorced. When you get divorced, it's it's all of a sudden, your in-laws that once told you how much they loved you and that you were a great mom and they were so thankful for you for 20 years,
Mhm.
and their aunts and uncles and cousins, all of a sudden they hate you. How did it turn so opposite? And and my family wasn't like that. My dad, he was like, what's going on? I don't hate Jeff. I don't hate him. And all of a sudden my mother-in-law hated me, despised me, wanted to take my kids away from me, and they should never see me again. And things are said about you that you're thinking, what? Like, I never did that. And all of a sudden they're accusing you of abusing your children and neglecting them, and you're thinking, but if I did that, wouldn't my husband be accountable for doing that as well? And nothing makes sense, and yes, I was abused by my first husband. He has a horrible temper, and he would get enraged, and he would choke me. And when I was 31 years old, I started having seizures.
Mhm.
And I didn't want a divorce. I believed that when you married somebody, you married them for life and you took those vows seriously. And so even in my divorce, I wasn't going to bring it up. I was just going to let it go. I was relieved that it was going to be over. But it wasn't. He was
No.
going to, and so then it of course did come up, and we had mediation where he assaulted our mediator, and yet this wasn't even brought up. And I thought,
Ugh.
I said to my attorney, shouldn't this be brought up? And he said, oh no, mediation is private, it's confidential. And I said, no, this should be shown that he has a temper. No, this isn't okay.
I
And
Oh, I agree.
his attorney didn't even want to represent him. And my two youngest daughters, they loved their dad and they wanted to see their dad and everything, but they didn't want to live with him because they were afraid of him, and things like that. And yet they were so afraid of the guardian ad litem that they didn't feel comfortable telling her why, because they were afraid then their dad would they'd be in trouble with their dad. And so our family court system is broken. It's flawed in so many ways, as so many parents know. And I didn't know what parental alienation was. I didn't know, you know, we're talking about so long ago, so many years ago. We started our divorce in 2008 and it didn't end until 2010. So we're talking about a long time ago. And then my youngest daughter, I, he just wouldn't give up. He kidnapped her out of the graduation parking lot. He tried to take her many other ways. And then a couple that I believed were friends of mine, um, they then started to try to take her away from me, and got the help of my other children and my ex-husband. And so then it started the process of family court all over again for me. And the judge here in Maine, Judge David Paris, he he is out of West Bath in Bath, Maine, District Court. And so anybody in Maine, I'm sure, has had him for a judge. And he was biased from the start. He hired a guardian ad litem named Jessica Braun, and she wrote a scathing, vicious report about me. She didn't even meet me or come to my house like she was supposed to. She was ordered to do that. She didn't do either of those things. She met me over a Zoom hearing for about 20, 25 minutes with my counselor there and one of my friends, because I asked my counselor to please come because I was so nervous that she wasn't, answering my phone calls or coming to my house or anything. And my counselor said, "Oh, you're just being nervous. There's nothing to be worried about. Your daughter's gonna come home." She thought I was crazy, of course. But then she was on that Zoom hearing with me, and afterwards she said to me, something's going on. This is not right. The guardian ad litem didn't even look at me the whole time. She didn't ask me any questions. She didn't ask my counselor or my friend that was there any questions. Her report on me was so bad that my counselor wrote to the guardian ad litem board and said she should never be a guardian ad litem ever, that she was not doing her job. She didn't ask for Abby's medical or counseling reports to view them. She didn't ask for anything. She then went out of her scope of duties and called my ex-husband, who abused me. And then was even in my divorce records that, yeah, he abused me, and I had seizures from it. And interviewed him and my adult children who have been alienated from me, and wrote, a report about what they said. Didn't ask any of my longtime friends, family members, nobody. And then she diagnosed me with a mental illness herself, even though she's an attorney and has no ability to do this.
Oh, that's unethical. Did you report her to the bar?
I did. And they sent back a thing saying that they did not feel that, as acting guardian ad litem, that my child was an adult at that time, because she turned 19 and then 20 when it finally ended. That because the guardian ad litem was not acting in the realm of an actual guardian ad litem of a child, because my daughter was an adult, even though it was a question of whether she could make decisions on her own and things like that, because she was being bullied and she was on the autism spectrum. And then she said, but she's not acting in the capacity of an attorney either, so she can't be punished as an attorney. So in other words, she could not be punished any way at all, even after I made a complaint to the bar and my counselor made a complaint to the bar.
But what about the ADA rights? Because she can't make a diagnosis. That violated the ADA rights, I would say file another complaint.
Okay, that's a good idea. But yeah, she diagnosed me with an illness,
Mm-mm.
and she didn't even look over any of my medical files from any of my doctors, my neurologist, my PCP, nor my counselor, who said, I've been seeing her for 2 years, twice a week, and she does not have that diagnosis. And um, and the judge praised her at the beginning of our hearing, saying he thought she had done a wonderful job.
Mm.
And it was vicious. It was horrible. Jessica Braun should be disbarred. She's a horrible person. She she helped to. She talked about how wonderful these people were in Bowdoin that had my daughter, and we had text messages in between my daughter and them and my second husband, where she would say to my daughter, oh, we talked to your stepdad today and we had coffee with him, and your mom is making his life miserable, to my daughter who was living with them. And then she would say, and then I have the text messages where this woman would say that, and I have no problem saying their name, Pat and Tracy Ward. Um, they did foster care in the early 2000s, and he is a convicted felon from
Mhm.
California. And how can a convicted felon be allowed to do foster care? That's what I want to know. And they adopted two of their foster care kids, and one of them is dead, and she ran away from home. And the other one that they have now, they have a full guardianship on her. She has no social life.
Mm.
They took her out of school after 5th grade to homeschool her. And when we were going through court, she still hadn't graduated from high school because they didn't homeschool her. They took her out of school so they could control her.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what they wanted to do with Abby, my daughter, because they wanted the money, the financial end of it. And from the very beginning, I told the judge that they want her for the money. And he said, oh, no, I believe that they are doing this out of um, out of the goodness of their heart. And he kept saying that. Well, then at the end, we fought for her to not have a guardianship, because when I realized he was going to give guardianship of my daughter to these people and she would never be free again, I realized it was better for her to have no guardianship. So we fought for her to not have any guardianship. And my counselor wrote a letter to Judge Paris, and I have it here. Um, it's really well written. She talks about how vicious the guardian ad litem report was, and about her going out of her scope as as a guardian ad litem and everything. And she wrote it to Judge Paris, and I believe that he realized he was in a little bit of a pickle, because my counselor wasn't going to stop. If he had granted guardianship to these people, she was going to continue, because she could not believe how bad this had gotten. And so he granted no guardianship.
Mm.
And he said that he believed that they would continue to take care of my daughter, even though they would not get any money for doing it. Well, within 2 months of him granting no guardianship, my daughter was out of the state of Maine. And I want to know from Judge Paris where my daughter is
Mhm.
and what she's doing and who's taking care of her. And, you know, after all this time, what is she doing? Does she have a driver's license? Does she have a job? Is she going to college? What is she doing? And why isn't he being held accountable for his actions? for taking her away from me and saying all of these things, that I was not a good mother, that I abused her. And then, of course, all the charges against me were dropped as soon as, the hearing was over. And they gave my daughter an emergency, PFA on me that was held over me for almost a year. And my daughter claimed that I was stalking her over in front of these people's house in Bowdoin, Pat and Tracy Ward, and sitting out in front of their house. But I was working 7 days a week to pay my bills and live, and it was nowhere near Bowdoin, Maine. The company I worked for is in Damascotta, and most of the people I worked for were way over in that direction. And I had no time to sit and stalk anybody. So when they were asked, do you have any pictures, any recordings of this? Did you call the police to show this? Of course, they said, well, no. you know? So the charges were dropped, and then she disappeared out of the state of Maine. I want to know from Judge Paris, where my daughter is, how she's doing. Why is there no accountability? He gets to make a decision from his, from his high up chair with his robe on and everything and his gavel. And then he gets to walk out of the courtroom and he gets to go home to his family.
This is a question I've always wondered.
And I have been, I have lost, thousands and thousands of dollars, and he's richer. And the guardian ad litem is richer. And my attorney is richer. And everybody else in the courtroom is richer. And I had to fight for my innocence, and I lost my daughter, which is priceless.
And
So,
these,
what are we doing about this?
right, these guardian ad litems, these third-party parasites have got to go.
Right.
Family court, as you know me, I would like to see it abolished and take everything into civil court where a parent can have a jury.
Right.
Like I've heard there's going to be collusion and some corruption there, but I think you might have a better chance with a jury.
Right.
And these parents that call out these false accusations, that's got to stop.
Right. Like my ex-husband, he can, at the drop of a dime, gut wrench, start crying,
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was awful. I was so afraid of her because she, she would get so upset and, oh, come on.
Oh, yeah, the crocodile tears just never ended. I'm sure you heard this from your ex. I just want to keep the children safe.
Right.
Oh,
They were so neglected. Really, if my kids were neglected for 20 years, first of all, why did he have more kids with me?
mm-hmm.
And secondly, why didn't he take care of them? Why wasn't he feeding them and clothing them and doing whatever it was? The guardian ad litem put in her report that every time my husband came back from being on ship, and I'm like, he was never on ship. Never, not once. He was in the Navy, but he was a tar Navy, which is all shore duty. So I want to know when he went out on ship and came home and found them neglected. Well, what a joke. She didn't even do her research and say, well, when were you on ship? And, oh, she must have thought he was just Mr. Wonderful. Because he has charisma, he has charm.
Where they try to sound intelligent, but they're really not.
Right.
And this guardian ad litem didn't even talk to you. That's
I know.
very scary.
Right.
This is like the witch hunts.
It is. I'll show her. She thinks she's going to take these kids away from their father. I do didn't want to take them away from him. You know, I didn't even know he was going to up and move in the middle of the night until he was gone,
Mm.
and he pre-planned it. And so every person that this is happening to them, I want to talk to them. I want to get together with them, and we need to write up some kind of bill to present to our legislators everywhere, even in Maine, where they don't even believe in parental alienation. And the judge just laughs at you. Oh, yeah, that's a made up thing. No,
Oh, it's child psychological abuse. It's in the DSM-5, V995.51.
oh,
And
yeah,
yeah, I think the judges are aware of this. They just either laugh it off or, well, they're child psychological abusers themselves.
right, right. They are. And, you know, if it happens in their family, then they have the power to control it from their bench so that their grandkids are with them and their in-laws are shut out because they're corrupt,
Mhm.
you know. So they need to be held accountable just like any other job that you have, any other, you know. Even my last attorney, she just kind of scoffed at me like, you know, well, you know, my husband tried to do it to me too, but you know, I made sure that they understood what was going on and everything. Like she could control it. And I thought, she has no idea. She has no clue,
Mm.
you know.
See, they tell, I'm sure you were told this, don't badmouth the ex. Well, when I had my kids, they would say, that's all dad does is badmouth you when we're there. Okay, so if they're telling a parent not to talk about family court, don't discuss the case with the kids, but yet they can go into the psychologist's office with the kids and read court documents and cause more anxiety to the child, which is child psychological abuse. So it's just very frustrating. We should be able to talk to our kids about what's going on in
Right,
family court
right,
and what is happening to mom or dad.
right,
They can say it in a way where they're not bad mouthing the parent, but the child, who, if the child's old enough, like 10 to 12, I'm sure they get it. A 4-year-old won't get it. That would just cause more anxiety in a 4-year-old. Does that make sense at all?
hmm,
But there's ways to explain things to a child. Like I always told my youngest, who was 12, I'd always hug him and I'd say, don't believe anything bad they say about me. And I wish I would have done that with the middle one, but here we are.
I know. And you know, and like when my two youngest would come home from California each summer, they would tell their counselor, everybody in California hates my mommy.
Mm.
Well, they believed that because everybody that they saw would talk bad about me. Oh, your mommy is such a bad mommy. She's such a bad mommy. Look at her keeping you away from your daddy. I wasn't keeping them away from him. He got up and left, and he was keeping my older kids from me. They weren't allowed to talk to me. They were blocked from any social media from me. They weren't allowed to call me. And I sent them out there every single summer, you know. And so they really believed this. And they would come
Right.
home and tell my counselor this. And she wrote letters to the judge repeatedly, and he did nothing. And she wrote letters to my attorney repeatedly. And he would say, oh, when they get older, they'll understand.
No, they don't.
They don't. They don't. It just gets worse.
Because the Stockholm syndrome
Mhm.
is set in and the brainwashing is so deep. I was watching a video where a psychologist was explaining, like this is a normal psychologist was explaining how this is how they alienate kids. Um, they'll say, "Oh, how was it at mom or dad's?" And the kid will say, "Oh yeah, we went to the pool, we did this and that." "Oh, you went to the pool? Did she, have you take a shower afterwards and get cleaned up?" "Oh no, no, but we had a good time." "Oh, really?" I mean, just a look.
Mhm.
can start installing these alienating tactics.
Right.
Ah,
My son said to me one time, "Mom, why did you slap me on my 3rd birthday?" And I said,
ah,
"I didn't slap you on your 3rd birthday. I've never slapped you in your life." And he said, "No, Dad and his 2 older sisters told him I slapped him on his 3rd birthday." And I go, "Zach, why would you ever think I would slap you on your 3rd birthday?" But it started becoming a memory to him because they said it so often.
mhm,
So
mhm,
they put these false memories in them too. And
right.
pretty soon they take away any happy memory that they had. And all they know are these false bad memories that never even happened.
I was looking for this name now that you say that, is they would have kept lying if you had never found out. Don't forget that. So I'm hoping these kids will find the lie or catch them in a lie. Because, these people eventually slip up. They're like criminals.
Mhm.
I really hope that they wake up because I had another a little poster to show you as well. I don't know. I don't want to take up our time trying to find that, but it's just so wrong. And these judges should be having drug testing and psych
Yep.
evals themselves.
Yep.
And
Psychoval, absolutely. Same with guarding ad litem,
yeah,
absolutely.
or
If
just get
they
yeah.
can come into the courtroom and judge our parenting, who's judging their parenting?
And they
Who's
don't even have kids, some of them.
right, right,
Also, judges should be given lie detector tests because you know how the opposing attorney's always kicking in for their judge campaign and
right.
things like that. Yeah, they should be totally investigated.
They're
There's so
supposed to
much.
be they're not supposed to be biased, but my judge was so biased. I have all of my hearings downloaded and you can hear it. You can see it. You can see the way he tells my attorney, "Okay, move on now." You know? And you think, "What?" Like it's repulsive.
Ugh.
And my daughter's court-ordered attorney, the way he says, before my attorney even gets out her question, he's saying, "Objection, objection." He must have said objection over 1,000 times during our hearings. I couldn't believe it. He had nothing to input himself to try to, show that there was any reason that my daughter should have a guardianship with these people. Yet, yet, so all he did was say objection. He put in no closing arguments at the end. My attorney was the only one that put in closing arguments. He didn't call any witnesses to the stand. I mean, and then when I put in, a thing to the bar about what he did in his behavior and that he's a sexual predator on top of it, um, they said that, well, the outcome of my daughter's case was a favorable one, so they didn't see why reprimanding him would was a wasn't a good thing. And I said, but the outcome was because of what I went for, not what he went for. So how is that a good thing for him? He didn't get what he wanted for her. I don't understand it. I
No. And he probably didn't even care either.
and he put in for more money than he was supposed to get for doing the case. And the judge, of course, wrote it right away. He got more money. And these are taxpayers and they have no idea that this money is going on in exchange like this for kids.
Exactly. The taxpayer has no idea because unless they go through this themselves, until it affects them or someone they know, then they'll be ready to hear all this.
Yeah. So if anybody lives in Maine and is going through this, and it doesn't even have to be Judge David Paris or Guardian ad litem Jessica Braun. I want them to contact me. I'm affiliated with AFA, and we have a website, and we're also on Facebook. So I hope that people will contact me, because we need to get this, you know, to the legislature in every state. We need to get this to the legislature. It is going on in every single state. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're in the smallest state of Rhode Island or the first state of Delaware or California. California, it's horrendous, what's going on there. You know, it's everywhere. It really is, and it has to stop. Parents are losing their houses just to try to keep their children, and they're losing their careers. I could have lost my career, right? And why? Why? Because of judges and guardian ad litems that aren't being held accountable. And that's, what other job can you not be held accountable for? What other job can you not sue them? I should be able to not only sue the judge and the guardian ad litem, but I should be able to sue Pat and Tracy Ward for what they did to me. They knew me for years. Their daughter was at my house, spent the night, and they knew that I did not abuse my daughter. They knew that I was a very good parent, but they wanted the money, and they saw the money. And they also knew that my daughter could take care of their, daughter that they adopted and took out of school. And they knew that they could go on vacations and leave my daughter in charge of their daughter. And, I don't even know why the PETA people aren't coming after them. They abuse the animals that they have at their house. They started breeding Angora rabbits, and my daughter even knew this, that they were neglecting the rabbits and they were dying. Her best friend, and her took pictures of them, and PETA people, they'll go after, you know, pet abusers and neglectors, but we as people, allow these people to neglect our children and abuse them, and we give them custody or guardianship of our children and take them away from the fit parent. It blows my mind.
It does, because I, have been following a case with, Jim Schock. I have him documented in my book, and, his judge, Maryann Petri, neighbor, if you can believe that name, she let his 4-year-old son stay with the mother who's living with a 4-count felon. So, I don't know where their reasoning is. I'm sure it evolves around money. I know this is a money court.
Mhm.
It's gotta stop, and that's why it needs to be brought to a screeching halt. I know you said that the system's broken, but it's actually working so beautifully for them. It's
Oh, it is.
yeah.
They know exactly what to do. They know what to hide. They know who to keep in the system. And then if there is a good judge that sees the corruption, they either do something to bully the good judge and make him corrupt or her corrupt
Mhm.
to stay, or else they get rid of them.
Right, they'll move them somewhere else in the courthouse, get them off the case,
Right. Right.
and I know people say this is a good old boys club. It's also, women judges are involved in the good old boys club as well.
Mhm.
It's just so disgusting. It has got to stop. And
It
the
does.
title, yeah, right, the Title 4E, and well, there's B, D, and E, but the Title 4E with these foster parents that are getting paid to have kids in their home that they really don't really want or care about. And as you said, they're babysitters for other kids so they can go on vacation.
Right. Hmm.
Their background checks, I don't know. Some of them get background checks, some don't.
Well, how did Pat and Tracy Ward get through? And he had a felony conviction in California, and he comes to Maine, and they're foster parents.
Ah, right, right. It's baffling. Um, that's another thing I'd like to see go is the Title IV funding. It's all being used with our Social Security monies. I think you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
You know, they're making
And people go, "Oh no, it's not. Social Security is separate." I go, "No, it's not." I've
bring
gotten
it
so many fights with people, and they go, "Oh no, there's a budget and it shows." And I said, "Yeah, there's a budget, but it doesn't mean they stick to that budget because they give it where, it's one big bank account. And if they have to give it to people, doing child services and foster care, guess what? They get that."
right. And especially if a child is disabled, they get more money.
Right.
And if they adopt them out, they get even more money.
And right. And these people specifically took children that were disabled because they were like, yeah, and disabled children, they can't tell, their caseworkers that they're being abused like normal children can. And then when they started talking in schools, when they took them out of school, and Maine is so lax on checking up on these children and making sure that they're really being homeschooled, that then when they go to take their, exit exam and get their GED, oh, well, their foster daughters didn't get their GEDs.
Yeah, they're destroying this nation.
They really are.
And the judiciary is destroying it from the inside, which is the family out. And this is happening to mothers and fathers who are good fit parents.
Hmm.
And there are judges that are biased against mothers or biased against fathers.
Hmm.
And that's why we have got to get this abolished.
Right.
No.
There has to be legislature that has to hear from you. They have to hear what is going on. And and people in politics, they don't really understand because they really haven't gone through this, because they're in that realm where they have affiliates that if anything were to happen to them in a divorce, or anybody, their children were being taken from them, they would just go to a judge that was a friend of theirs and say, "Hey, my kids are, being alienated from me. Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it." So they've never gone through, accusations of, like we have, and had their bank accounts emptied or had to go into their 401ks, because they're in that middle area where that doesn't happen to them, you know? So you have to talk to somebody that has been, you know, in an area where haven't had money for food sometimes, or getting to work has been a challenge because their car didn't start.
Mhm.
They couldn't afford gas to get to work, so they used their bike, and they felt like such a loser. And
Mm.
then the court orders them to pay for a guardian ad litem that they can't afford, and the guardian ad litem is against them and not even doing her job. So you think this isn't even possible until it happens to you, and you've always put money in your savings account, and you've always done the things that you thought you were supposed to do, and these things wouldn't happen to you. You're not a criminal, you don't do drugs, you're not an alcoholic or anything. And then you wake up one morning and somebody like Pat and Tracy Ward hate you, and they see you as having money because you've been responsible, and they're going to take your daughter away from you and get the money from the state. so they can go on vacation and leave your daughter with their foster daughter. And and
That's disgusting.
and the caseworker that's on that's supposed to be making sure that this doesn't happen to your daughter all of a sudden thinks, well, she needs a mom and a dad, so I'm going to go with them. you know Awful, horrible. You think that you're protecting your child, you think that you're making those safeguards, but you're not.
Mm-mm.
Anybody that thinks that, oh no, this won't happen to me, by the time it does happen to them, it'll be too late.
You're absolutely right about that. Um, a lot of people, like I said, they don't believe this until they go through it. But we have to continuously tell our stories and talk to people. Even going up to a stranger, I don't know if I told you this, but I was waiting to get into Sam's Club, and there were two guys standing there. One was older, one was, probably 25. And I said, "Hey, any of you guys been through family court?" We're
Hey,
waiting.
that's a great way to do that.
We're waiting to get into Sam's Club. And the older fellow said, "Oh yeah, this is what happened. I lost $58,000. The young kid says, "Well, I'm engaged." I said, "Well, you know, um, are you aware of, family court and what can happen if something goes wrong?" He says, "No, I'm engaged. I'm going to trust the process." I said, "Well, this is the process." I told him what the process and what can happen. I said, "Here's a scenario. What if you are happily married, but you get into a car accident and say your spouse is injured and becomes a head injury? What if they decide they want to move back with their parents and take the kids with them? You don't have a leg to stand on. So you better get a prenup." That's what I told them. I
I
said,
know.
if you're gonna marry someone, I said, you also better do background checks on everybody.
On everybody.
Right. And so he never made it into Sam's Club. He said he was going to go talk to a lawyer. That's how,
Yep.
if I can save one person from going down that road into family court in the future, yeah, gonna try.
I know. That's a great idea. I didn't even think about like just talking to people outside Costco or
Hmm.
whatever in the grocery store.
Right. Try to talk them out of going. I did talk to the guy that was working on a window for us in the house, and I said, "Have you ever been to family court?" It's like so horrible, right? He goes,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, yeah. My ex and I, we went in there once, and we looked at each other, and then we said we're gonna figure it out, and we never went back in there."
Oh, thank God.
Right.
Thank
See,
God.
right. I think there are people that are not personality disorders that can actually look at each other and say, "Oh, this is a lot of BS. We're not doing it." And then there's you and me who are getting hauled in there because our exes are personality disorders,
Right.
unfortunately.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Because even when my husband, left me, he did it under the table. Like I didn't even know he had already gone to an attorney, given him $5,000 out of our savings account, and um, and was already preparing. Like he had cleaned out our savings account where we were saving for a house. And then he was at work one night and I was doing the bills because I did the bills. I did everything. I even called in his refills for him. He didn't even know how to do that.
Oh,
And looking at our savings account, and I'm like, what? There's $700 in it? What's going on here? So I look it
mhm.
up and I see this check written to this attorney, and I see that he has cleaned it out. And we were on the East Coast, and this account was in California, so they were 3 hours behind. And I called them and I said, where did our money go? And they
Oh,
said, your husband has transferred it to another account. And I said, what bank account? And they said, well, we don't know. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, if I were you, I would get an attorney.
Mm.
And so I immediately called my father and burst out, started crying, and told him, and he said, get an attorney right now.
Oh,
And I couldn't believe it that he was doing this like under the table. I had no idea that he was actually making plans. He was that manipulative.
hmm. I think a lot of them are. And I, I've had other women say, I'm just going to stay in this toxic relationship so I don't have to go through family court, which is so sad.
But you know what? I lost all five of my kids.
Mm.
And if I had known what I know today, I would have just stayed and let him kill me because I didn't know that I would lose all five of my kids. And
Hmm.
they're priceless. They're priceless. You can't put a dollar figure on your kids. I miss them every single day. They hate me. They hate me. They think that I'm evil, that I did something to their dad that I didn't do.
It's the
So,
false narrative.
so the only thing that I have to live for now is trying to make changes for the people that haven't gone through this yet. And and that's what I live for. That's the only reason I get up now is is hoping that I can make changes for the people that haven't gone through family court yet. And I can get people like Judge David Harris and Guardian ad litem Jessica Braun stopped before they continue to hurt other families.
Hmm.
I mean, look at the New Raider case where Carrie New Raider was talked into murdering her mom with her dad. People don't realize that this is real brainwashing when you can convince your child to murder your mom.
Hmm.
And this isn't a single solitary case. You can look them up online. There's lots of kids that have been talked into murdering their parent, not just a mother, but a father, you know,
Yep.
and and in court, and these judges aren't taking it seriously, you know. So if they're not taking it seriously and they're not held accountable, we have to hold them accountable so that they will take it seriously and they will look at it and say, what if this kid goes and helps their mother or their father kill their other parent? Then who's responsible? Guess what? Those judges and guardian litems, they will be accountable.
Mhm.
They allowed it to happen. So we have to stop it. And that's the only reason that I get up, because I have to help stop this.
Exactly. And telling your story. And people cannot be afraid to tell their story. I know some people get put on a gag order, which is unconstitutional.
And they need to keep talking.
Right.
Gag order. Keep talking. What are they going to do? Get thrown in jail? Keep talking.
Yeah.
They're in jail. I don't care where in the country they are. I'll come see them. I'll come see them with a camera. I'll
Right.
record them.
Yeah. These judges are out of control. They run their courtrooms like a three-ring circus.
Yep, that's exactly what it was.
Right. And then when you question them, the judge told me, you are annoying me.
Right. I know.
Well, I'm just asking questions or telling you what's going on. And well, they don't want to hear it.
Judge David Harris threatened me a couple of times that he was going to throw me out of the courtroom. Then he said that he would put me in jail. Like, no, this is my daughter.
Hmm. Yeah, they always use jail as a big threat. Uh, I think parents need to know that they don't need to be afraid to go in there. I was not afraid to go in there. I went in there and nothing horrible happened. They just denied me my prescribed medications, which is a human
Yeah.
rights violation. But if you're trying to do the right thing and they put you in there.
Right. That's what I thought. I thought when he threatened that, I thought, who cares? Like, does he really think that going home and crying is any better than him threatening jail to me? Like, I thought, so what? Do
Yeah.
it.
At taxpayers' expense, taxpayers need to know that there's a bunch of parents sitting in there for non-support.
Hmm.
And that was abolished back in 1833, but these judges don't get it. That's another podcast in itself.
Right. So I have to keep going because I don't want it to happen to other kids and
Right.
other moms and other dads.
Mm,
These kids, these kids will just continue it on to their kids. The hate, the venom.
I agree. I agree. Dr. Mark Roseman wrote in his book, Preserving Family Ties, that it will affect 6 generations to come. So that's how many generations are going to be ruined, and they're going to be ruining other people's lives.
Right. And I don't understand. Like, my daughter got married a year and a half ago, and her in-laws don't wonder, when she talks bad about me,
Mhm.
like, don't can't they think outside the box and think, I know that my ex-husband's charming, but can't they think outside the box and think,
Oh,
I raised her till she was 19 years old, and she graduated high school, and she seems lovely to them. Don't they look at her and think, I just want to meet her mom for myself and make my own opinion? They don't want
right.
to do that. They don't want to make their own opinion about their their daughter's mother, their
I'm
son's
with you.
mother-in-law. No, because they
Oh,
can't think out of the box.
right. If my child was marrying someone who didn't speak to their father or mother, I
Mhm,
would say, I need to talk to them.
mhm.
And if they, I don't know, put up a stink, I would have to take my child aside and say, there's problems here. And I would,
Right.
give the ring
If
back and
you get
run.
divorced and you have a child, you don't think it's going to happen to you? It
Right.
is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because what these people don't understand is what they did to the mother or the father. If they marry into this family, they're going to do this to you at some point.
Right.
We have to warn people. That's why you're
Right.
here, and that's why I'm here.
Right. If my daughter has a child with this man and they end up divorced, her father and her will make sure that her in-laws and her husband do not see that child ever again. And they can't see that. They can't see what's happened. Yeah.
Yeah. People, I think what it is they meet this alienator personality disorder. And like you said, yours is so charming. So is mine. He puts on the
Mhm.
victim mode, and God knows what he's told them. And they're that stupid to believe what they're being told
Right.
without thinking, hey, there's two sides to the coin. I think we better
Right.
talk to this mother or father.
They don't want to see any pictures of my daughter when she was little. They don't want to see those photo albums. They don't want to be able to see that, you know, maybe I wasn't the monster that they're portraying,
Hmm.
because then that would crash their whole world.
The truth would come out. And it's so devastating to the personality disorder because now people know.
Right. Have to keep
Where,
everybody in the
right,
dark.
definitely, because my ex won't even give me their baby pictures. So there's something wrong there. If they won't even say, "Oh, here you can have the pictures, make copies, and I'll take them back." I'm willing to work with you, but they don't want to work with you because they're personality disorders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. My son got married in 2017, and I've reached out to his wife, talking about my family. Nothing bad. I did not badmouth them. All I said was talked about my family and my growing up and about my son when he was growing up and funny little things. And I told her I would love to meet her and get to know her, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. I've sent them Christmas presents. I made a wedding quilt for them. I'm sure that that got set on fire or something,
Ugh,
you know? Um, isn't she even a little bit curious?
right. Well, maybe the lies are so strong. I really think that's what it is. They've now entered the wonderful world of Stockholm syndrome.
Right.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for all these parents, you, me, anyone
And
going through this. This is just terrible. You know, how can people reach you again? I know you mentioned you are on www.theaffa.org. That's THEAFFA.org.
uh-huh.
Can they reach you any other way?
Yes, I'm on Facebook too. Our organization is a nonprofit organization, and we have a Facebook page um, called um, Advocates for the Falsely Accused,
Hmm.
AFA. And we're on Twitter, and we're on, all those social medias and everything. And my name is Julie Andrews, and I live in Maine right now. Um, I am trying to move and everything, but because it's so difficult to live here now after being falsely accused.
Hmm.
But I would love to help anybody. I will talk to anybody about their situation, whether they're going through it currently or if they're, you know, past the court hearings and everything. So please,
Hmm.
send me a message on Facebook or whatever. Our AFA group has a falsely accused day every September in a different state. So we would love for people to join us and talk to us and tell us your stories. And we certainly need to get legislation through that stops these judges and attorneys and guardian items. They have to be held accountable just like everybody else.
Exactly. Well, I totally appreciate you coming on. So, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, other platforms. And again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you so much, Julie Andrews, for speaking out and telling your truth.